Knowledge is not power. It is only potential power. What you do with it, that is where power begins. Bruce Lee understood this long before self-improvement became a slogan. To him, philosophy meant nothing unless it was lived, embodied, practiced. He studied hundreds of books from Lao Tzu to Krishnamurti, but he was not impressed by theory, only by what could be translated into action. He once wrote in his notebook, "Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do." These words contain a truth so simple, so direct, that most of us overlook it every day. We know we should change, but we don't. We know we should forgive, but we hesitate. We know what matters, but we are distracted. Knowledge has become entertainment. We consume wisdom like we scroll through screens, passively, without transformation. Bruce Lee believed that knowledge without application was like a sword left to rust, beautiful but useless. To apply knowledge, in his view, was to become it, to let every lesson move through muscle, breath, and decision. He said, "Knowing is not enough, not as a challenge, but as a reminder that learning is not an act of collecting, but of becoming." In a world of constant information, it is easy to mistake understanding for transformation. We read about calmness, but still react in anger. We talk about focus, but remain scattered. We admire discipline, but rarely live it. Bruce Lee's philosophy demanded embodiment. He called it the living art. To him, the body was not separate from the mind. Every movement, every breath was a form of thought. That is why he trained, not only to fight, but to feel, to understand how emotion, belief, and habit shape action. He said, "I do not hit. It hits all by itself." That line is not about physical speed. It is about integration, the merging of mind and movement. When knowledge becomes instinct, when understanding becomes action, when discipline becomes nature, then we are alive. Most people live in the gap between knowing and doing. They dream, they plan, they intend, but never act. Bruce Lee called this gap the paralysis of analysis. He warned that the more we think about acting, the less we actually move. If you spend too much time thinking about a thing, you'll never get it done. His advice was simple: act, learn, adjust, because real wisdom is not discovered in books, but in motion. Every truth must be tested through experience. Otherwise, it remains theory, untouched by life. That is why Bruce saw. Lee's philosophy is not about perfection, but practice. He once said, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." Consistency, not intensity, builds mastery. Action, not intention, transforms reality. The same law applies to everything, to kindness, to patience, to love. If you do not practice them daily, they remain words, and words do not change the world. When we move, we learn. When we do, we see. When we apply, we evolve. This is not just physical, it is spiritual. It is the same truth Buddha taught. Do not believe in what you have heard, test it through your own experience. Bruce Lee lived this principle with a modern soul. He did not follow tradition blindly. He absorbed what was useful, discarded what was not, and made everything his own. That is what apply means. Not imitation, but translation. To take an idea and make it alive in your context, your time, your body, your life. Action is where philosophy becomes truth. A belief untested is not a belief. It is decoration. And life is too short for decoration. In the end, Bruce Lee's lesson is not about doing more. It is about being what you know. When understanding and action become one, you stop chasing wisdom. You start living it. The world tells us to imitate, to follow the rules, to fit in. From childhood, we are taught what to think, how to act, and who to become. But Bruce Lee's voice cuts through that noise, calm, fearless, and alive. He says, absorb what is useful, discard what is not, and add what is uniquely your own. At first, it sounds like practical advice, a method for learning. But underneath lies one of the deepest philosophies of human freedom ever spoken. It is not about collecting knowledge, it is about filtering truth through the self. It is the art of discernment, of knowing what to take from the world and what to let go. In a time when we are flooded by information, opinions, and ideologies, this wisdom has never been more urgent. We no longer lack knowledge. We drown in it. We scroll, read, listen, and mimic, but we rarely digest. Bruce Lee believed that the mind, like the body, must be trained, not filled. He said that learning is not about memorizing, but about understanding through experience. He once wrote in his journal, "A good teacher protects his pupils from his own influence." He meant, never let another person's truth become your prison. Absorb, test, refine, then make it yours. This was not arrogance. It was humility, the humility to realize that truth is not static. It breathes, evolves, and takes new form. In each human being who lives it. Think of the great teachers of the past. Socrates questioned. Buddha let go. Rumi danced with mystery. Nietzsche shattered certainty. Each of them carried fragments of truth, but none claimed to own the whole. Bruce Lee was part of that lineage. He turned philosophy into movement. He translated wisdom from page to muscle, from mind to life. To absorb what is useful means to stay open. To discard what is not means to stay critical. And to add what is uniquely your own, that is the birth of creativity, the soul of authenticity. You are not meant to live as a copy of someone else's idea. Your task is to discover the essence of yourself in everything you learn. When Bruce Lee trained, he didn't worship any single style. He studied boxing, fencing, kung fu, judo, then stripped away all that felt unnecessary. What remained became Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. But Jeet Kune Do was not a style. It was freedom itself. He said, "Man, the living creature, the creating individual, is always more important than any established style or system." And that is his message to all of us, whether we are artists, workers, parents, or dreamers. Don't live by imitation. Live by exploration. Learn from everyone, but kneel before no one. Respect all paths, but walk your own. That is how wisdom becomes alive again. The modern world pressures us to conform, to think in algorithms, to consume. Trends to speak the same language of convenience. But the soul doesn't thrive in imitation, it thrives in creation. If you only absorb without discarding, you become crowded. If you discard without absorbing, you become empty. But if you absorb wisely, let go fearlessly, and add your own essence, you become a live, original whole. This principle transcends race, culture, and creed. Whether you live in New York or Nairobi, Paris or Mumbai, Tokyo or Cape Town, the human challenge is the same: how to live truthfully in a world of noise. Bruce Lee offers a compass, not to follow, but to listen within. He reminds us that wisdom is not inherited, it is created anew in every generation. Each of us must test life with our own hands, to look, to feel, to fail, to understand, and to finally add what is uniquely our own. So, when you listen to him, do not just hear a martial artist. Hear a philosopher of liberation, a man who broke forms so that others could find themselves beyond them. To live like Bruce Lee is not to fight. It is to flow through learning with awareness, to let the wisdom of the world pass through you like wind through a forest, leaving behind only what resonates with your soul. The rest, let it go, because only in emptiness can originality breathe. Only in freedom can truth appear. We live in an age that worships comfort. Everything around us, the technology, the culture, the promises, is designed to make life easier. And yet, despite all this comfort, we have never been more restless. We chase a life without pain, and in doing so, we lose the meaning that pain was meant to teach us. Bruce Lee understood this paradox. He lived in a body of strength, but a world of struggle. He faced rejection, prejudice, financial uncertainty, and the constant weight of expectation. But rather than wishing for a lighter load, he built a stronger back. He once said, "Do not pray for an easy life, pray for the strength to endure a difficult one." That line is not a call to suffering, it is a call to courage, because life will not bend to your prayers, but you can grow to meet its weight. This truth is universal. Whether you live in Los Angeles or Lagos, Berlin or Bangkok, the human condition is the same. We all suffer, and we all search for meaning in that suffering. Modern society sells us escape, comfort, distraction, avoidance. It tells us that ease is success, that peace is the absence of struggle. But Bruce Lee's philosophy reminds us peace is not found in avoiding difficulty, but in facing it with strength and grace. He knew that pain refines the soul. Just as fire tempers steel, adversity shapes character. It burns away illusion, pride, and fear, leaving only what is real. In his own words, "Do not deny the challenges of life. Embrace them, for they are your teachers." He trained his body with discipline, but he trained his spirit with resistance. Each hardship became his classroom. Each obstacle, a mirror of his own growth. He once described water again, not as softness, but as resilience. Water adapts to obstacles not because it is weak, but because it understands endurance. It knows that persistence is the truest form of strength. In every culture, we find the same lesson. The Stoics in Rome said, "The obstacle is the way." The Buddhists in Asia said, "No mud, no lotus." The Africans say, "Smooth seas do not make skillful sailors." The Christians say, "Carry your cross." Different tongues, one truth. We are not meant to escape the storm. We are meant to become through it. Pain is not the enemy, fear is. Because fear convinces us that we are fragile, that life is something happening to us instead of something happening for us. Bruce Lee saw beyond that illusion. He knew that difficulty is not punishment, it is participation, a test of will and awareness. To endure a difficult life does not mean to harden yourself. It means to become spiritual steel. Strong, but still human. Resilient, but still compassionate. You do not need an easy path. You need a strong soul. And strength is not born in comfort. It is forged in resistance, in heartbreak, in failure, in loss, in those nights when you whisper to yourself, "I can't do this anymore," but you wake up and do it anyway. That is the moment where growth begins. Not when life is easy, but when you endure what feels impossible. If life were easy, we would never wake up. Ease dulls the spirit, struggle sharpens it. Bruce Lee's message is not about glorifying pain, but about redeeming it, to turn hardship into wisdom, to turn wounds into strength, to turn chaos into awareness. The goal is not to avoid difficulty, but to learn how to move within it, gracefully, purposefully, fearlessly. So when life hits you, and it will, remember his words. Do not pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. Pray not for fewer storms, but for the power to sail through them. Pray not for peace without cost, but for peace that comes from understanding, because the soul grows through friction, not through stillness. And one day, when you look back, you will see that every wound was a doorway, every challenge was a teacher, and every dark night was guiding you toward the light within. There is a quiet power in humility, a power that our world often forgets. We live in an age of perfection, of filters, pride, performance. We are trained to look strong, sound certain, appear unshakable. But Bruce Lee saw something deeper. He saw that true strength is not found in perfection, but in the courage to be imperfect. He said, "Mistakes are always forgivable if one has the courage to admit them." Those words are not about guilt, they are about freedom. Because the moment you admit your mistakes, you stop pretending. You stop carrying the heavy armor of ego, and you begin to live truthfully again. Bruce Lee lived in pursuit of truth, in motion, in thought, in being. He believed that denial was the greatest weakness. To him, a mistake was not a failure. It was feedback, a reflection, showing where you were still learning, still becoming. He once said, "A wise man can learn more from a foolish question than a fool can learn from a wise answer." What he meant was, the humble heart is the learning heart. The one who admits he doesn't know grows. The one who pretends he already knows dies in ignorance. To admit your mistake is not to lose. It is to release, to free yourself from illusion. The ego hates confession. It thrives on image, on control, on pride. It whispers, if you admit your fault, they'll see your weakness. But the truth is the opposite. Admitting your mistake is an act of inner strength that few can bear, because it means you value truth more than appearance. It means you choose growth over vanity. It means you are alive, aware, evolving, human. Every culture, every tradition has understood this, though in different languages. The Japanese have a word, kaizen, the art of constant improvement. It begins not with ambition, but with acknowledgement. You cannot change what you do not face. In Christianity, confession is not humiliation. It is cleansing. In Buddhism, mindfulness begins with seeing things as they are, without denial or judgment. In African philosophy, Ubuntu teaches, I am because we are. To admit your mistake is to restore balance, not only with yourself, but with others. And in the West, the Stoics said, no man is wise who cannot look within and say, I was wrong. Bruce Lee embodied all of these truths, not as theory, but as living philosophy. When his students made mistakes, he didn't punish them. He asked, what did you learn? Because the mistake was not the problem. The problem was refusing to see it. To admit a mistake requires more strength than to throw a punch. It is the warrior's courage turned inward, not a battle against another, but a battle against pride, fear, and shame. Every human being, no matter where they live, fears the same thing, to be seen as wrong, to be judged, diminished, or exposed. But what we forget is that vulnerability is not exposure, it is connection. When you admit your mistake, you open the door for others to do the same. You remind them that perfection was never the point. Truth was, and in truth, there is peace. Bruce Lee said that life is not about control, it's about expression. To express truthfully, you must live truthfully. And that means embracing the cracks in your armor, the stains in your story, the imperfections that make you human. He once said, in great attempts, it is glorious even to fail. Mistakes are proof that you are attempting, that you are participating in the raw, unpredictable experiment of living. The man who never errs never learns. The man who hides his errors never heals. But the man who faces them transforms. Forgiveness, then, is not something others give you. It is something you give yourself when you have the courage to face the truth. Forgiveness is clarity. It is the moment when the past stops defining you and the present starts freeing you. That is why Bruce Lee's quote is not just moral, it is spiritual. It reminds us that the human soul grows not by being flawless, but by being honest. And honesty, in every language, is the beginning of peace. So, the next time you stumble, in your work, in your love, in your faith, do not hide. Look at it, name it, learn from it. Because your mistake is not a mark of weakness, it is the doorway to self-understanding and the courage to admit it. That is the moment your soul begins to breathe again. The world glorifies talent, the gifted, the extraordinary, the chosen few. We are told that greatness is rare, that success belongs only to those born with brilliance or luck. But Bruce Lee rejected that illusion. He believed that the true warrior, the true master, is not born, but built. Not through special gifts, but through focus. The successful warrior is the average man with laser-like focus. That sentence is simple, but it destroys the modern myth of genius. It tells us that you don't need to be special. You need to be focused, because in the end, focus is power. Bruce Lee was not the tallest, the strongest, or the most connected. He was an immigrant, a dreamer, a man between two worlds. But what set him apart was his intensity of attention. When he trained with total presence. When he read as if the world depended on it. When he moved, his body and mind were one. He understood something most of us forget. You become what you give your attention to. Today, our attention is scattered across thousands of distractions. Screens, headlines, opinions, notifications, each one pulling a thread of our mind until we are no longer whole. We live in fragments. We think in fragments. We dream in fragments. And then we wonder why our lives feel incomplete. Bruce Lee's wisdom cuts through that fog. Focus. One thing, one path, one purpose. When you bring your mind fully into one moment, you awaken a power greater than talent, the power of presence. He said, "The successful warrior is the average man," because warriors are not born in comfort. They are forged in discipline. And discipline begins with where you place your mind. Focus is the bridge between potential and reality. It is what turns possibility into mastery. Without focus, intelligence becomes confusion. Without focus, energy becomes waste. Without focus, even love becomes scattered affection instead of deep connection. Bruce Lee lived in an age without smartphones, but he already saw the future's disease, a distracted mind craving stimulation but starving for meaning. He wrote, "The possession of anything begins in the mind." He meant what you hold in your thoughts, you bring into being. What you think about most grows. So, what do you think about? What do you give your time to? Because what you focus on, you feed. The warrior, to Bruce Lee, was not someone who conquered others, but someone who conquered himself. He mastered the inner battlefield, the restless thoughts, the wandering mind, the temptations of comfort. The average man, he said, already has everything he needs. The difference between mediocrity and greatness is not in ability, but in attention. Think of a magnifying glass. Alone, it does nothing. But when the sun's light passes through it, focused, it burns with incredible force. Your mind is that glass. Your energy, that light. And focus, the alignment that turns light into fire. This is not about productivity. It's about presence, to give yourself completely to one act, one conversation, one breath. That is how you build depth in a shallow age. In a distracted world, focus becomes rebellion. To be fully here, fully conscious, is the modern warrior's weapon. Every culture understands this truth in its own way. In Zen, they call it mushin, no mind, the state where thought and action are one. In Stoicism, they call it intentionality, the discipline of directing thought toward what truly matters. In African wisdom, it is said, "A man who chases two rabbits catches none." The principle is the same. To live a meaningful life, you must learn to say no, no to noise, no to distraction, no to everything that steals your awareness from the present. Focus is not restriction. It is freedom from fragmentation. Because only when you give yourself entirely to one thing can you truly feel alive. Bruce Lee's life was short, but it burned bright. Not because of time, but because of intensity. He lived each moment with the sharpness of a blade, the clarity of a warrior who knew that awareness is the essence of life. He wrote once, "It's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. The world shows us everything, but few ever see. We skim through life without depth, and so we remain unchanged. Focus is the way back to depth, to meaning, to mastery, because the man who can give his full attention to a single breath can give his full heart to a single life. And that, Bruce Lee reminds us, is the secret of the successful warrior, not to be superhuman, but to be fully human, with laser-like focus. Time, the most democratic resource in existence. Everyone gets the same amount, 24 hours a day. No matter who you are, rich or poor, young or old, the clock moves forward all the same, and yet how differently we use it. Some spend it chasing what they cannot keep. Some drown it in noise. Some trade it for approval, money, or comfort. And a few, a rare few, live each hour as if it were sacred. Bruce Lee was one of those few. To him, time was not currency. It was life itself. He said, "If you love life, don't waste time, for time is what life is made of." Simple words, but they cut through illusion. Because what we call life is not a collection of years. It is a collection of moments, how we live, what we focus on, who we become within them. He believed that wasting time is not just laziness. It is forgetting what it means to be alive. Modern culture has become a machine of distraction. We consume hours without awareness, scrolling, reacting, rushing, forgetting. We treat time as though it were endless, but the truth is brutal. Time is the only thing you cannot get back. You can lose money and earn it again. You can lose status and rebuild it, but the second that passes is gone forever. Bruce Lee lived with that awareness burning in his heart. He wrote in his journals daily. He trained every morning. He learned something new every night. He lived with the urgency of a man who knew his time was finite, and that awareness did not make him fearful. It made him alive. In one of his notes, he wrote, "To waste time is to waste your life. To master time is to master yourself." He understood that time management is not about schedules. It's about spiritual alignment, about living deliberately, about being present. Because when you are truly present, 1 hour can feel like eternity. And when you are distracted, the whole day can vanish into nothing. He often spoke of flow, that state where body and mind move as one, where time disappears because you are fully absorbed in the moment. That is where life happens, not in memory, not in fantasy, but in now. Every culture knows this truth. The Stoics said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." The Buddhists said, "The past is gone, the future is not yet. Only the present is real." African wisdom says, "He who has time but does not use it will one day beg for more." Across the world we are haunted by the same paradox. We crave more time, but we waste the time we have. Bruce Lee refused to live in that contradiction. He treated time as sacred ground. He did not rush through life. He entered it fully awake. That is what he meant by love life. To love life is not to chase excitement, but to honor your hours, to be fully where you are, not halfway, anywhere else. Think of your time as breath. Each one is limited. Each one matters. When you waste it, you lose a piece of your existence. When you honor it, you multiply its meaning. Bruce Lee's message is not to make you anxious. It is to wake you up, to remind you that every minute can either dull your soul or bring it closer to truth. He knew that one day time would stop. For him, for everyone. But he did not fear that ending. He feared living a life that never began, and that perhaps is the real tragedy of modern humanity. Not that we die too soon, but that we live too late. So pause. Look at the clock not as your enemy, but as your teacher. Ask yourself, what am I trading my time for? Does it serve my growth, my love, my purpose, or am I slowly selling my life to distractions that will never remember me? To love life, you must love your time, not the idea of it, but the experience of it. You must treat each moment as if it were the only one that truly exists. Because it is. Every second is a small death. Every breath, a small resurrection. Between them, That is where meaning lives. Time is not passing, you are passing through it. And what you leave behind is not measured by how long you lived, but by how deeply you did. The world is full of excuses disguised as reasons. I didn't have the chance. I wasn't born in the right place. I don't have the right connections. I could have done great things, if only, but Bruce Lee had no patience for that. He had no time for waiting on permission. From the world. To hell with circumstances. I create opportunities. Those words were not arrogance. They were liberation, a declaration of inner freedom from the oldest prison in the world. Victimhood, because the truth is, circumstances are never perfect. They never will be. If you wait for the right time, the right place, or the right people, you will die waiting. Bruce Lee grew up poor in Hong Kong, faced racism in Hollywood, and rejection from both East and West. Doors closed, scripts were rewritten. Without him, opportunities were stolen, but he refused to become bitter. He became better. He looked at the wall and said, "If there's no door, I'll make one." That is what separates the doers from the dreamers. The world gives you material, but you are the one who must shape it. Life is not something given, it is something created. Most people confuse luck with readiness. They call others lucky without seeing the hours, the sweat, the failure behind the moment of success. But Bruce Lee knew luck favors the disciplined mind. Fortune comes to those who prepare their spirit to act. He once said, "The successful warrior is the average man with laser-like focus." That focus is how you create opportunity, by turning attention into energy and energy into creation. The weak wait for luck. The strong build it. Think about history's greatest minds. They all began with nothing but a vision and defiance. Mandela, in prison. Da Vinci, without patronage. Tesla, without recognition. Each looked at limitation and said, "To hell with circumstances, I will create." That spirit transcends continents. It's the same spirit that built nations, freed slaves, cured diseases, wrote symphonies, and crossed oceans. Every advancement in human history was born from refusal. Refusal to accept that the way things are is the way they must remain. Bruce Lee embodied that refusal. When Hollywood wouldn't give him a role, he wrote his own scripts. When studios said America wasn't ready for an Asian hero, he said, "Then I'll make them ready." And he did. He didn't wait for change. He became the change. We often underestimate our creative power. We think opportunity is something external, something found. But opportunity is born in perception. Where others see obstacles, the awakened mind sees raw material. Where others see rejection, the strong soul sees direction. It's not that opportunity doesn't exist. It's that most people don't recognize it when it arrives, because it wears the disguise of difficulty. Bruce Lee saw clearly. Circumstances are not in my control. My response to them is, that's the key. You can't control the weather, but you can build the ship. You can't control the storm, but you can learn how to sail. Every life, no matter where it begins, in a slum or a palace, has two paths. To react or to create. To react is to live as a shadow. To create is to live as a force. And the power to create begins with belief. Not belief in chance, but belief in agency. That what you do matters, that your effort can carve space in an unyielding world. Bruce Lee was more than a martial artist. He was a philosopher of movement. He saw action as the truest form of thought. Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do. Those words are the continuation of "to hell with circumstances." They mean stop waiting, start becoming. If the door is locked, build your own key. If no one listens, speak anyway. If the world is blind to your light, shine brighter, because the world does not give freedom. The soul claims it and hears. The truth? You don't need a perfect life to make a meaningful one. You need courage. You need clarity. You need the defiance to say, I may not control the world, but I control how I meet it. That's the warrior spirit, not violence, but vision, not domination, but determination. Circumstances may be walls, but the mind, when awakened, is always a door. Every generation is born into noise, traditions that command, systems that confine, voices that say, this is how it must be. But Bruce Lee refused to live inside anyone else's definition. He was a man who studied everything: philosophy, psychology, Taoism, fencing, boxing, acting, life itself. And from it, he built something that was entirely his own. Adapt what is useful, reject what is useless, and add what is specifically your own. In those 12 words lies a blueprint for freedom. He wasn't only talking about martial arts. He was talking about life as an art. Because to live consciously means to filter, refine, and create. We are born into a world of imitation. From the moment we can walk, we are taught to copy, how to speak, what to believe, how to fit in, and yet the deepest hunger of the human spirit is not to conform. It is to express. Bruce Lee's philosophy was an act of rebellion, not against others, but against blindness, against the habit of following without seeing, of believing without questioning. He once said, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless. That means wisdom is not memorization, it is discernment. You can read 1,000 books and still know nothing if you never ask what is true for you. The world worships imitation. We call it tradition, professionalism, respect. But blind imitation is the death of spirit. Bruce Lee studied ancient masters, but he refused to become a shadow of them. He learned from them, and then he broke the mold because he understood. Knowledge is a tool, not a cage. In Jeet Kune Do, his martial art, he removed rigid forms and techniques. He said, form is for training, not for truth. Truth must flow, alive, responsive, dynamic, like water, like life, and so it is with existence itself. Religion, culture, ideology, they all begin as paths to wisdom, but over time they become prisons if we forget to question them. The mature soul, Bruce Lee reminds us, is not the one who rejects everything, but the one who chooses consciously. He said, the key to immortality is first living a life worth remembering, and that begins when you stop being an echo and start becoming a voice. To adapt what is useful means to learn with humility. To reject what is useless means to think with clarity. And to add what is your own means to live with authenticity. This is not selfishness, it is integration. It means you respect the wisdom of the past, but you also trust the truth of your experience, because wisdom is not inherited, it is interpreted. The Taoists called it Wu Wei, effortless alignment with what is real. The Stoics called it virtue, the harmony between thought and action. In African philosophy, it is Ubuntu, the dance of individuality within community. All teach the same lesson. Do not copy life. Participate in it. Shape it. In modern times, imitation has taken new forms. We copy lifestyles, beliefs, even emotions from screens. We wear opinions that aren't ours and call it identity. But the cost of imitation is authenticity. And authenticity is the soul's oxygen. Bruce Lee's wisdom is an antidote to that suffocation. It reminds us that freedom does not mean rejecting everything. It means knowing what to keep and what to let go. You can respect your parents' values, but not be enslaved by them. You can honor tradition, but still evolve beyond it. You can learn from the West and East both, but still stand as your own center. He once said, man, the living creature, the creating individual, is always more important than any established style or system. That sentence is a declaration of a spiritual independence. It says, you matter more than the mold. Your direct experience is the ultimate truth. So Learn, read, listen, but above all, digest. Transform what you receive into something that breathes you, because if all you do is repeat, you are not alive, you are programmed. The soul, like water, must move, adapt, evolve. To live rigidly is to die slowly. To live fluidly is to live freely. And perhaps that is the greatest art of all. Not the art of fighting, but the art of becoming.